Hello, welcome. Welcome to our bi-weekly supporter stream where I check out some games that have been sent by our Patreon backers. As always, I'll be checking out stuff that was submitted previously and we didn't get round to, then anything newer that we haven't seen, and then towards the end of the stream, if there's time, I'll look at stuff that we've seen before. So most of what I do on this channel is kind of one-off stuff. I don't return to games multiple times, but because this stream is the supporter stream, then we kind of occasionally get to look at the same games several times throughout their development, and that could be nice as well, to kind of see how they've moved on and changed. Thanks for joining, everyone. Hi Jeremy, hi Bernard, hi Mivi, hi Valentin, hi Nick, hi Tim, hi Gnagna. I never know how to pronounce it now. I'm going to quickly show you Whimsy Koi. The dev said this wasn't a very good game for streaming. I don't know what that means, but I think it basically is like a kind of basic, interactive screensaver kind of game. So we'll take a very quick look at this and see what it does well, and then move on to some of the other stuff I've been sent for this review stream. I think we might have a bit of a clickety incremental game thing here, but the problem with playing incrementals on a very short stream, you don't get boy. Okay, robot boy. I got a robot boy straight out the bat. Amazing. Football boy. I'm doing a quick actor. Okay, they're all the koi I've got. I like that they're kind of weird novelty things like robots and a football and stuff, but then when you're kind of zoomed out, you don't really think of them that way as much. Like this football koi is obviously a football, but it's still a fish. It's not like detracting too much from the fact that it's a chilled out fish feeding thing. What happens when I feed them? They're gonna poop. I'm gonna do some favoritism with this stripy one here. You're the only one that gets any food. Hey. No, no. Ugh. Well, keep it. Might click a koi to view its information. Growing is growing, lad. These other guys aren't growing. I'm feeding. And that's fine. Look, it's got bigger. Koi grow after eating food. Koi also grows time passes, even when the game is closed. Okay, cool. I'm always intrigued how you do the math for idle games where stuff grows when you turn it off. I did a very basic one with students once where we did a Tamagotchi, but the logic that we used for our kind of save, well, was like there was a save file that literally just recorded the time that you were at, like every few seconds of the game, something stupid like that. And then when it loaded, it would check how long it's been. And if it had been more than an hour, it would set the Tamagotchi stats to all being really low. And if it was more than like 2 days or something, it would my stream mode on Discord. If it was if it had been more than a couple of days, it would just kill them. But it wasn't very nuanced. Was that other plants? It doesn't look like we have plants. I think we only have Oh no, hang on. No, we've got stuff we can customize the pond. Change the water. But yeah, it doesn't look like we can actually place. We can have dragonfly. Oh, nice. Have some cherry blossom. Buy this upgrade, increase. So one thing I would say that we can just sort of like call out now for the dev is that your tutorial is just appearing, and then if the player clicks around and does other stuff, which people are going to do, because there's not much to do, so they're going to experiment and just click around. Your tutorial exists out of the context that is supposed to be seen, right? So it's now saying buy this upgrade. Like, where? What? Which upgrade? Right? You intended that tutorial text to be shown in a particular context in the game, and because I wasn't locked to making the choice that you wanted me to make, I was able to click away from it, and now we can't see what it actually refers to. So that's a general kind of tutorial thing to watch out for. When you're testing your own tutorial, you will do what the tutorial says. When your players use your tutorial, they will not do what the tutorial says. They will do whatever the hell they want. And that will get them into this situation. Well, look, we do have a decoration panel. Yeah, this is the good stuff. This is the juice. I kind of want to be able to rotate them with my mouse as well. We do have it. Oh, hang on, random rotation. Yeah. So this is lovely. This is kind of. There's a lot of nice stuff there. I think, yeah, someone said about these kind of increments. I think you might actually be able to window it. It feels quite kind of full-featured. I think this is a genre of game where, you know, it's very easy and reasonable for a player to be a little bit skeptical that the game is gonna like not have much in it, because although you can make very good sort of idle desktop toys, obviously it's gonna maybe have a bit of a reputation for being a genre that attracts developers that are just kind of trying to be lazy and make a quick buck by not doing much work. But there is a lot of lovely attention to detail here. There seems to be quite a lot of content. If we go back to the Koi Gacha, I mean, we got quite a lot of variety just out of the first tier of prizes in here as well. You know, we can't really find out what the long tail version of this game is like over a series of days checking out on stream, but there's lots of nice stuff here. Right, I'm gonna feed. Where has he gone? Where's the one I was feeding? That's the one that gets food. Look at him generating $4 an hour. The big boss. The big boss won't eat anymore. Oh, it's because he's eaten. Because he's an adult, he doesn't need food anymore. I wish that was how it worked. That would be a boon. Adults simply did not need to eat. Right, this blue one is my new favorite. Eat food. It's gonna be a big blue boy. Dr. Joe Baxter Webb. PhD in Media and Cultural Studies. When you started your doctoral research in 2012, what did you think the eventual arc of your career was going to be? Well, I'm glad you asked. My overall goal is to have, some time in teaching, a few different studio roles, and then ultimately retire to click on a koi pond that doesn't really exist and express favoritism for various different color catfish by feeding them while starving the others. That is what I'm hoping to achieve by going through the rather grueling 3 or more year process of obtaining a PhD. Hi Jeremy, if you're already a patron, the form is on the Discord. It's the different form because I need to keep the data separate. Because this one lets me see if we've got a game on this stream that I saw like 2 weeks ago or whatever, and then I can put it to the back of the queue. Right, we're going to move on from that because I will get stuck in that forever. But that feels really, really kind of, I mean, it's doing the thing I always say about demos. When you're making a demo, think of what the most skeptical, think of a potential player of your game, what they might be skeptical about your game, and then answer that skepticism directly. The things that this does really, really well immediately off the bat is that you can see there's loads of variety of content in there, and you can see there's loads of attention to the kind of game feel UX-y stuff of like how it feels to put things down and sort of like sound effects and all of that kind of stuff. So the two things that someone might be most skeptical about, i.e., I don't know, the game being cheap would be, that kind. And I don't mean cheap in terms of cost. I mean like production values. It's just immediately there. There's kind of production values up the wazoo straight off the bat. So I think that's really nice to see. The next thing we're going to check out is Nightwater that I have been seeing get developed in the Discord over the last kind of 6 months, maybe longer. And all I've really seen of Nightwater is the sort of art style kind of coming together. I don't really know much about this. Let's check out the store page quickly. I'm very, very tired. So if you ask a direct question in the chat and I don't get around to it today, I apologize. I'm still I've had a weird month. Everything is kind of taking a while to get my life back together, and also titrating onto drugs, medicinal drugs, not recreational drugs. So very kind of visually interesting looking game. Forage, craft, and automate to grow your factory. Unlock new technologies and expand your island to discover new biomes. Progress through the ages from sticks and stones to the Bronze Age, the Industrial Era, and into the future to uncover the secret of the lighthouse and escape this reality. There's a lot of interesting stuff here. We just jump into really kind of interesting to have a sort of satisfactory type game with a bit more of a rustic setting, I guess. Don't know how much we'll be able to do in like 10-15 minutes of demo, but we'll see. Let's see what's accessible to us in the first little chunk of the game. Go back on Discord and turn stream mode on because it's being... I'll just shut it down entirely. Hang on, give me a second. when you start streaming, Discord puts on a mode that won't do pings. And I had it on earlier and then I turned it off. And I can't work out how to manually turn it back on, so I'm just gonna banish it with the old manager of tasks. To the sound of my voice. Nightwater, the decision you made, a door you shaped, a prison you chose, rules you wrote, boundaries you drew. Reach the lighthouse to find closure. Reach the lighthouse to have your questions answered. Reach the lighthouse so we can part ways again. Collect 10 wood, place a workbench. Very interesting seeing the toon shader on these dust motes. Right, we're going to collect wood and place a workbench. I do feel like some of the contrast on the kind of textures on things feels a little bit high. Let's see how we get on with general visibility. I yearn to punch a tree, is what I... When you're very close to the tree, because it kind of does that swamp shrink and stretch thing when you hit it. Feels a little bit like you're humping the tree. But I don't know, I could be into that. Place a workbench. Where shall I place my lovely workbench? I want the toon shader to show me the outlines of objects, and maybe there to be less noise on the textures. It's a really kind of striking effect, but I find it, if I kind of look over that way, I kind of find it hard to read which objects are which depth. It's kind of almost making me want a tiny little bit of volumetric fog so that the trees that are further away are kind of grayed out a little bit, and I get a little bit of a sense of depth because the shader is so overwhelming, and it's a really kind of cool visual effect. I think it looks neat and it ties everything together and makes it feel like the same style, but I think it might be a little bit hard on legibility, but we'll see. Let's press rumb to exit. Okay, so B to build or V to build. Right mouse button is to exit, R is to rotate, left shift to build multiple. So you can hold shift and you can click and place multiple of something. I think we will start over. I put it in this little shady spot. No, it won't let me. I don't know why. Don't know why. I'll just put it here then. Okay. Craft 4 wooden planks. Don't mind if I do. But I don't have enough woods. Ah, primitive wood harvester. Oh, wonderful. Don't mind if I do. Where's the best place we could put that? That seems to... It's highlighting which trees it will harvest. We want it in a place with where a couple of trees are there. I don't think it wants us to build that yet. Fine. Fine. I'll build the things you want me to build in the order. Place a research table. I love to do research with my research table. Now I can place the wood harvester. What do we actually need to build a wood harvester? We need 2 planks and 60 logs. Wonderful. Now we can get wood automatically. Unlock stone milestone 1. Use the manifesta in front of the cave to expand the island. Don't mind if I do. Right, so that is farming wood. And I have to go up every so often and take the wood out of it. Use the manifesta in front of the cave. Is this the manifesta? There it is. We can see the lighthouse. And we choose a new plot of land. But we need more wood. We need 30 wood. So I should still be chopping away manually. And then I'll go to the harvester and see how much we've got. So, let me know in the chat what you're working on this week. Always happy to hear what people are doing. Got any milestones coming up? Always good to have something. If you're working on a game or some sort of project, always good to have some sort of deadline looming. Whether it's next week or 3 months away. Really kind of helps you kind of focus on what you really need to get done. One of the things about doing dev as a hobby is you just kind of forever just fiddle about with things. You know, the few people that I do mentorship with through the Patreon program, we've got like 7 slots for mentoring at the moment. So much of that ends up being about like kind of treating yourself as your own boss and setting your own deadlines and stuff so that you always have a budget of time. Because if you say, you know, I'm going to have this game ready for a demo or a particular type of playtest on this date in 2 months or whatever, then you've got a budget of time and you can work out what you can achieve within that time frame. So hopefully you've all got stuff lined up you're working on, and you've got like some sort of deadline to work to, even if it's just, I don't know, the first time you're gonna let someone else play the game, that kind of thing. It's always helpful to have. Right, we can't manifest that land yet because we need stone, and we need whatever these things are that look like some kind of mud pie. Night Raven is making a jukebox. Nice. Waiho jotting ideas down. Refactoring. I wish I'd gotten good enough at programming to ever feel like I was actually refactoring, because most of the time, when I do what I call refactoring, I always feel more like I'm taking a piece of code that doesn't really work and rewriting it so that it works, which is not really it's not really refactoring. Just fixing something that didn't work properly in the first place. Right, what are these things? We need a thing that can cut our blocks into blocks. We need to probably do something at the research station. Craft some of these. I think the kind of quest mission setting in this is quite good from what I've seen already, because the first one is very much do this thing, you can do it now, and you kind of maybe have to collect a couple of resources, and then it's given us a little bit of a longer tail one where it's like, you know, build the next bit of the island, and you have to do quite a lot of steps to actually get to the point where you can build the next bit of the island. Right. What do we have to do here? We can make a primitive rock crusher. Okay, so the way that the research table works is you've kind of got like a sort of resource specific XP that you get for collecting that resource. So as I collect wood, this goes up and I unlock the other wood things. As I collect stone, this goes up and I unlock the other stone things, and so on. I'm not sure how I unlock the clay thing, but maybe there's just clay that I need to go and find and start harvesting, and then we'll get that. What have we got in here? Where would we get clay from? Are you clay? Are you clay? Excuse me. Where might a fellow stranded in time and space find some clay around here? What's this? Are you clay? That's got an interaction highlight on, but it doesn't do anything. What's wrong with you? Forbidden iPad. Oh, forbidden iPad, give of me your bounty. Yeah, exactly. Refactoring is not fixing things. Refactoring is making the code better as code. The functionality of it should basically be the same, right? So that's kind of why I'm joking that I've never actually done any refactoring, because often I'm just rewriting something, and it might end up as a smaller piece of code, but so often I just have stuff that doesn't work on it the way I want it to, and I have to go and rewrite it. But that's what happens when you come in. Okay, so these more square blocks, these are clay, I think maybe we could have a little bit more visual distinction between the clay blocks and the stone blocks. They are a different shape, but the color difference isn't that pronounced. Although, I guess maybe there's a nice little, very small amount of like a judgment skill involved in spotting one and telling it from the other, so maybe that's not a problem. Okay, we've got some clay. We've got some other stuff. Can I do the manifester now? Can I? I can't remember how many things I need. So what I would really like in this game would be something that stops me having to go over here and check what I need. So I need six more of these. Basically, I don't know, it seems like such a good UX feature that every time I play one of these games I want it to have it. But that kind of shopping list pinning system from Subnautica, where you'd have like a symbol here and you'd click on it and then it would become a little list of things that you're trying to get up here. It's just, I know, like, there's some situations where trying to remember the thing might be like a fun little skill check for people, but most of the time it's just annoying because you end up running back and forth to the place where the place in the game where you can access the recipe and the game tells you what the recipe is. You have to keep running over there and checking it. And there's some situations where that could be fun, but I think it just ends up feeling like busy work a lot of the time. So that would be my kind of one killer app request for a game like this that would make it just way more kind of pleasurable straight off the bat, is to have that kind of thing. You could have it as an upgrade as well. You could have it as like a thing that's initially deliberately irritating so that later in you can introduce an upgrade for it, of like I don't know, your character gets a notepad or something. Murder first. There we go. Maybe a little bit more of a celebration around that as well. That's a big milestone that we got to there. Oh, look how big the island feels already compared to what it was at. The pin button? Where? Where's the pin button? That's the pin. Okay, cool. That makes sense. Okay, so we can do that bit over there. There's the pin. We've got it. It does exist. Amazing. Thanks for the heads up, Bernard. Bernard. I never... You pronounce Bernard differently in different countries, and I never know... I never know whether someone's going to be a Bernard or a Bernard. So we do have the pin thing, resource. The pin icon UX thing, which is good. So yeah, that would be my big thing if it wasn't there, but it is there. I'm not sure why I didn't notice it. I think maybe just the positioning in the UI wasn't as intuitive as it could be. I really like the mood of this. It's very chill. There's just enough things to think about. I can imagine when it gets a little bit more complex, you have to think a little bit more. At the moment, it feels very kind of linear and on rails. That's not a bad thing. It means that, you know, your players will all get the same experience in the early game, which is a good thing when you're kind of developing, because it means that the feedback that you get is coming from players that are all having the same experience. Whereas if you have a game that has loads of different kind of like options and modality in the early part of the game, then very, very difficult to balance for different people. I like the aesthetic. I think you notice now that the mood has changed and we've got the fog. It feels like it's toned down the toon shader a little bit, and I think basically it always needs a little bit of volumetric fog to help distinguish the different distances, because the toon shader kind of the toon shader sort of feels like it inhibits your ability to perceive distance in a 3D world, because the outlines are as big far away as they are further up. As someone, I don't know who in the chat, was mentioning another game that kind of shrinks the outlines the further away things are, or reduces the texture the further away things are, but it's a really kind of pleasing aesthetic. It's just trying to balance those trade-offs of how visually noisy does it get when it's not got all of this kind of extra, you know, the kind of lighting has changed a little bit and it looks a little bit clearer. Anyway, let's move on to the next one. That's called Nightwater. If you want to check it out, I think there is a public. I think the demo is public. Not sure, but as always, I will, when the stream is finished, I will go through and add the links on the timestamps to any of these that are public. Not all of them are. Some of them are the opposite of public, is private. But the ones that are, I will add the links. Right. We've got a couple that I've been sent things to download. I'm gonna do the stuff that's on itch.io next. So let's do Rats Against the Sewers. Got any notes on this? A breakout game about a crew of rats escaping the sewers. Okay. Arrows for control of boats, space to kick off, and Q and W to activate crew abilities. Buy crew on the shop and pick ones that will be active. Future ideas. Okay, cool. This is a good thing to have for an early prototype, because you can kind of let people know that maybe you're already thinking about some of the stuff they might want in the game. Q and W to activate crew abilities, space to kick off, arrows for control of boat. Let's see how that goes. We're doing like a kind of themed breakout. That's neat. Do those falling rocks hurt the boat? Because they look like they might. I'm a big fan of like anything where someone takes a really kind of well-proven classic arcade game and does something slightly more interesting or thematic with it. And this is already kind of doing that. I do kind of want to see my rats. I want to see like little kind of red wall dudes in a hood, you know, like a little rat guy, a little Miss Frisbee and the Rats of Nim kind of. Yeah, the boat movement is nice. It kind of rocks. There's a lot of potential here just from the kind of theming alone, because you've got, you know, you've got the rocking of the boat, you've got the fact it's rats. We can, if this becomes a bigger project, you can do cool stuff with the water itself that is, you know, pretty much just cosmetic, but will make the game feel good. Okay, active crew, Q and W to activate. They have some sort of abilities that I don't seem to have yet. I'm not sure what the icons are from the things that are dropping down that I've been collecting. It looks like a peanut or a mushroom or something. Ah, okay. Meowster. So these are our crew. Okay, captain, first mate, deck. I've got 12. Those are scraps. They're scraps of food. The ship will move faster. All existing balls get duplicated. We've got a captain now. And so we've got a speed boost on the Q button. Oh, look at this. Got straight up Peglin level now. Yeah, having to catch the scraps is great. It creates a really nice kind of risk reward thing where you've got the ball that you absolutely do need to hit, and then the scraps are occasionally going to fall at the same time as the ball, which is going to create some like moments like that where trying to catch the scraps creates this kind of moment of like, oh, I you know, I tried to do too much. Launching the ball doesn't always feel amazing, or like, yeah, I don't know, like being able to kind of launch it very slowly against the wall, like that feels quite anticlimactic. So I would think about how that works. The theme is great. You've already got this kind of slightly character-driven thing with the characters that you unlock. Oh, it's my speedy boat ability. I would really suggest looking at kind of animal-driven fantasy for your creative direction for this. So Redwall, the Rats of Nim, particularly the movie, because there's some really cool kind of like magical rats in that. And you can do something that's kind of slightly cool and edgy, but still kind of charming and cute at the same time if you go down that route. And then maybe even think about what the ball is, because maybe it's like a magical orb or something. And I think all of those things setting-wise would fit together quite nicely to make something that feels quite coherent, you know, like a slight kind of cute but dark fantasy thing, and then the animals, and, you know, the ball is magic. Maybe the scraps of food don't really read as scraps of food, so I would think a little bit about what those are. But I'd be tempted to just make it, just overtly make it cheese, because the thing about cheese is it's just like the obvious resource for rats, but also it will be bright yellow and it will read like a coin. So you'll be using the kind of expected visual language for like for currency or treasure in a game. But this is, yeah, this is really cool. There's lots of little kind of quirky things that I would work out about the physics, but those are things that you can, they're things that you don't need to have sorted in your first prototype. Like the appeal of this is very strong already. Let's just do a quick when there's no music on a game. I like to just overlay something because we get a quicker experience of like what the mood of the overall game would be like if we have something playing. That's what you want. You want this kind of like slightly Harry Potter, dark, whimsical fairy tale music. Add wizards. Always add wizards. The thing is, when you add wizards, no, this isn't necessarily true, but one of the reasons why fantasy and sci-fi themes are so popular in games isn't just that we're all geeks. It's that they add affordances. And like having magic in a game of some sort allows you to go, okay, there's green magic and that bright green color means this, and there's pink magic and that bright pink magic means this. And you can kind of do the same with like colors of laser beams and crystals and stuff in sci-fi as well. And it just means that it's, if you have some sense of like, I guess it's a way of visualizing power, and like power and visual relevance are quite important in games. You want to go, okay, here's the thing you need to collect. Here's the thing that's dangerous that you did as a player. Here's the thing that's dangerous that the enemy did. And so you kind of want excuses to make these things bold and bright and emit VFX. And magic is just a very easy way to have that excuse for like why certain things in the game glow or sparkle or explode into fireworks and stuff like that. But yeah, it doesn't have to be magic, but I would totally kind of look down, like Redwall doesn't have magic in, for example. But I do think maybe it's a good use case for there being a little bit of that kind of fantasy. It seems like there's already a little bit of that in the world building from what we've seen from the characters. What does this guy do? Oh, do they cost scraps to use the ability, or? Not sure what the scrap icon there is, or if I can like sell them or something, if that's what it is, like selling a Balatro Joker. It's great. I think there's a lot of potential there. I'm going to show you R.A.T.S of Nim for people that don't remember it. Look at this guy. Look at that guy. The movie is a lot more magical than the book. Look at that guy. Yeah, the kinks. The Discord is just for patrons. There is a regular stream for non-patrons. It's all on the website. So the way that it's written in the book doesn't have all of this kind of magical connotations, but in the movie they make it a lot kind of more. Yeah, it's a good movie. This stream is sponsored by the 40-year-old Don Bluth movie, Mrs. Frisby and the Rats of Nim, which is an adaptation of the book, Mrs. Brisby and the Rats of Nim. And I don't know why they changed it from Brisby to Frisby. I think, no, it's the other way round. I think maybe they thought Frisby sounded too silly, or maybe Frisby had become a trademark in the gap between the book and the movie. I don't know. Answers on the postcard. Let us know if you know the deep lore of what happened between Mrs. Brisby and the Rats of Nim and Mrs. Frisby and the Rats of Nim, or vice versa. That's a really neat little prototype. There's oozing with charm. I think it's a good example of why, you know, there's loads of kind of best practice stuff about, you know, prototypes don't have any art in them and stuff like that. But I think a lot of that comes from design in the context of a AAA studio where you know that you have artists who can do whatever you want further down the pipeline, right? So if you read most game design textbooks, they will say a prototype should just be ugly and get you there as quickly as possible. And there's truth in that, whatever type of game you're making and however you're making a game, because you don't want to like over decorate something and then make things difficult for yourself later on. But the thing is, in a larger studio, you would make a grey box gameplay prototype with no art in, and then parallel to that, you would have a concept artist going, here's what the treasure looks like, here's what the characters look like. And you can look at those two things. And in Jesse Schell's Art of Game Design book, I've actually got the cards. Got the cards sat next to me on my table. Look at how that is the most like the thing about Jesse Schell's The Art of Game Design is you will never find a textbook that looks more like a textbook. That is the most early 2000s textbook-ass graphic design you ever did see. But Jesse Schell talks about concept art being a form of prototyping. So with a larger team, you do parallel prototyping and you prototype the gameplay and you prototype the art and you do all of those things in parallel, just like you do with any kind of creative activity, really. You probably do similar things when you're making movies. You make a storyboard, and then as you're making the storyboard, someone else starts designing costumes, right? As a solo developer, you don't have all of these different people doing these different specialist roles, so it does make sense to make an early prototype that has a little bit of the final flavor of what you want the world building and the art style and stuff like that to be in, because then your prototype can test the appeal. It does change the data that you get from playtesting, because you need to make sure that the art or the theme aren't like, well, that you can't make sure that they are, but they will affect how people feel about the gameplay, right? I had a really good example of this on, I think it was the what was it called? Board Game Design Lab? Is that what that? There's a podcast about board game design. And there was a developer on there, and they were saying that they sort of over-polished their early prototype, and they add loads of like metal coins and stuff into the prototype. And they found that they were missing problems with the game because the players liked these like pretty, like physical, tactile objects so much that they were then like not focused on the things they really needed to fix about the game. So it's always a trade-off. But I do think that there is some sense in testing like the appeal of the theme and some aspects of the art early on in your prototypes, that was a good example of like a midway point, that kind of breakout game with the rats, because I could see what the gameplay was, I could see how the theme connected to the gameplay, and that started to give me loads of ideas of like what the bigger, more polished version of that game could be. Zilosopher, GLA. Let's do the last ones that are on itch first. We've done that one. Spirit Mask. Good Spirit Mask RPG. I tremble at the mention of the word RPG. Let's see what we've got here. This looks like there's a lot of game here. Oh, I think I had a funny note with this one. Let me just see what the note says. Jeremy said, I approached making this game with the idea, what if Pokemon was bad? And have always wanted to make a creature collecting game, as I've played a few on emulator. I enjoy RPGs and I can understand why people don't like them. I do want to make sure to stay away from any form of grinding. This is my first game I've shown to people, and I've not worked on any real story beats. This is mostly for functionality, so I apologize if there's any bugs. Okay. That's all good. Creature Collector meets Super Mario RPG. I played Super Mario RPG very briefly. The thing I most remember about it was that sort of super focused on low numbers, which I quite like, but potentially makes the game hard to balance. Because when your numbers are big increment, big chunky numbers like 100 and 1,000, you can add small fractions onto them without it changing, well, with it only changing the balance in small chunks. Whereas when you play a game that's based on smaller numbers, like a card game like Hearthstone or Magic the Gathering, suddenly like doubling or tripling a number has a massive effect, especially if you do it twice. New game. There's no way that you can be part of today's reviews, King. This is like a backlog thing. I'm not like... People aren't sending stuff in now. This is stuff that people have sent in the last week or so. Movement with WASD on control on keyboard, shift to run. Okay, I'm gonna go with the, I would go with the controller. I haven't plugged my controller back in since I went to a playtesting event at the weekend, so. Obtained firecracker ×1. You can open your menu with tab or start button and close with escape or B on controller. The sound that you've got for the menu hover over is quite grating. Obviously, choose whether you're going to do pixel art fonts or vector fonts and stick with one of those things. There's some sort of inconsistency there. Exit menu. Eight direction sprites. Very luxurious. Who's this person? Having some kind of fit over there. Another traveler. Chilly night with the fog rolling in. I must have missed you boarding the ship. Funny since not many come here anymore. Let me guess, you're into spooky tales. No, maybe come to pillage from the rotten carcass. We should back to the cabin for the arrival. Okay, I will. Music's gnarly. I'm not sure I want this level of gnarliness in the music when we're just walking around. It's cool, but it does feel more like battle music than walking around music. Obtain scotch tape ×1. So one of the things that is an immediate gut reaction thing to me is I would like the camera to be zoomed out twice as much. The art looks nice. I think it would look nicer smaller. It would emphasize how detailed it is. We're zooming in and it's drawing attention to stuff like these VFX that aren't in pixel art for a start, which some people are going to be grumpy with you about. But there's also a navigation problem where it's just like, when I'm walking around, I can see so little of the map that I can't actually see what my options are as a player for where to go. So I'm just, like, if I go, like, when I'm here, right? I'm basically almost at the end of the pier there, but I have to walk along the pier to see. So I think zooming the camera out about 200% or 50%, whatever you want to call it, it will make the art look better. It will look more appealing. When this is on a big screen, these pixels are way too big. Like a pixel on this art, on my screen, is about... I should get a ruler. It's about 1/4 centimeter. About like... Yeah, 2.5 millimeters per pixel. It looks massive. And that means that it's like I'm not... It's hard to appreciate it as much as if we were zoomed out a little bit more. Why you come? Now into hunts. Wind the hunts. Okay. Getting some kind of Spirited Away vibes off of these guys. Some sort of board. We go in hunts. They're telling me to go in there.
Hello. Ah, you made it here safely. The spirits stir. You've arrived at an inopportune time. The spirits on this island take a tangible form when we've coexisted. Whom we've coexisted with on this island. But since we've started digging in the mines, I've seen our relationship sour. Please help. Behind me, 3 masks, 3 spirits. They've asked for help, and by wearing a mask in battle, you will take their form, and maybe, just maybe, we could make a change.
Okay, so we're doing the kind of Pokemon swapping characters in and out thing, but it's via the mask, which is a really, really neat way of, like, using the same system and doing a very different thing with it thematically. I like that. That's cool.
The spirits need your help. We need your help. You will need a mask to journey around this island. Please pick one.
Bulbasaur, Charmander, Pikachu. I'm going to go with Pikachu. Oh, it's got bunny ears. This mask seems to have a lovely him when the wind passes by. Okay, that's a wind. This mask seems to have a certain groundness to it. We can become a mudcat, a windy bunny, or this mask seems to have a certain warmth to it. A fire monkey? I'm going to be a fire monkey. Do it.
That's a fine selection. Let me show you how to use them in battle.
So, in the note, Jeremy said, I know people hate these games. I don't think they do. I think that, you know, I've complained about them a lot, and it is usually because the set of choices that you get in each turn of the combat isn't interesting enough. Because it's like, you know, it's usually attack, spell, block, item, and the information that you have to make the decision about what to do on your turn is just not rich or interesting enough to be like a deep choice for an adult to make. So, and that's deliberate. I think when you play like old Final Fantasy games or when you play Pokemon, they're designed to keep the battle relatively simple so that the actual game is about the meta game of collecting and training the things, right? Which is why they are creature collection and creature training games. You keep the micro part of the game relatively simple so that the game can actually be about improving the stats and the loadout of the characters. But then it does kind of get into that place of like, well, maybe you just make the battling an auto battler if it's going to be so simple that the decisions you're making don't really mean anything. Let's see how it's implemented here.
Welcome to battle. Select engage to begin your attack. Each spirit has 4 moves. 1 standard, 1 status, 1 elemental, and 1 stronger attack. Each costs stamina. Choose your move.
Power. That one costs 8 stamina. That one costs 5 stamina. That one costs 25 stamina. Oh, I'm fighting right to left. That's unusual. So the thing where the player's characters are on the right facing the left is a thing that comes from Japanese culture where you're reading from the right to the left. So that you write from the right to the left, and that means the direction of travel in the games is from right to left. It feels a bit weird to do that in a kind of game that is sort of natively in English. I am going to stamina. Oh, restless chimp. I didn't know there would be a real-time event.
Watch carefully. Press the button corresponding to dodge or parry for the incoming attack.
Yeah, I don't have my controller plugged in, so we're not gonna see what those are. Select defend now. What does, oh, the switch mask, and then this would be like our kind of Pokemon switch out ability. Sniffle. Sniffs around. Lowers target's attack for 2 turns. I think what I don't find enjoyable about this style of combat is that there's like... The system sort of means that you can kind of math it out and work out which thing is the more efficient use of your resources. And the fact that you can do that to some degree means that you're then encouraged to do that, and then you end up doing like boring math problems rather than just kind of gut reacting to things. And obtained apple charm ×1.
This is text dialogue. Let's battle.
A battle is about to begin. The combat sprites are great. I'm gonna do the little transformation. Theming is fantastic. The mask thing also helps to explain why there's a limited amount of them. Like, when I first started the channel, I had a video on these, and I was talking about how one of the problems with doing Pokemon is that people expect a large library of stuff. So one of the best things you can do is switch your theme to a set of things that people expect there to be less of, right? So if you do Pokemon but it's Necromancers, you can kind of get away with there only being 20 creatures. If you do Pokemon but it's dinosaurs, you can get away with there only being 20 creatures, because you're taking the theme away from a world of this massive variety of monsters, which is what kind of Pokemon and stuff like that have. You've kind of done that here. It's like there is a limited amount of these kind of spirit animals that correspond to a mask, and that means you can kind of get away with having a smaller variety. People will still want the variety, but it adds a kind of justification for it in the theming of the game of why there might be less variety. Because when you make an indie version of a larger game, or you make an indie game inspired by a larger game, it's not enough to just say, my game will have less stuff in it because I'm an indie developer and I have fewer resources. That's not a player-facing reason for the thing. That's a developer-focused reason for the thing. You need a player-facing reason for the thing, and like having a fantasy that just generally involves less variety of stuff is one of the ways of doing that. Use the submit is going to be enter. Got it that time. Just hammer random buttons. We need a little bit more feedback on some of these things. It's not super clear when I'm succeeding in things than when I'm not. I would also look at the way that things like buffs and debuffs are communicated in something like, you know, Slay the Spire or Darkest Dungeon. When we've got an ability like that, the Sniffle, that is doing something to them to reduce their stats, we need a reminder that that's happened after the fact. We need like some little icon or something that shows us that the opponent has been sniffled. There's a lot here to like. I like everything about the art is cool. You're gonna have to do some work on making the interface and the text look nice. I would zoom the camera out a bit. Controversial opinion, but I am leaning more and more towards just not trying to use pixel fonts in pixel art games unless you're like really set up to do it in a very strict way with like a bitmap font that matches the exact pixel size of your game, because it just always ends up looking a little bit trash. We've been gradually in the game we're working on, gradually sort of migrating all of the UI and menus to being like HD stuff, like how Celeste does, which is weird, and it takes some getting used to. But I think as long as you're kind of following general graphic design principles like okay, the line weights of the typography are roughly the same size as the pixel art, then you're kind of okay. But yeah, this just feels a little bit too big and zoomed in. The other thing I would look into is your use of black outlines, because the grain of this floor makes it look too important. The outlines of these rugs make them look too important. So I would, like, just from a pixel art perspective, I would use the black outlines to indicate the outside of a solid object or character. And then when you've got like these outlines that don't matter so much, like the rugs or the outlines on the, the outlines on the floorboards aren't actually black. They're like dark gray. I would make them paler because it makes that background texture less extreme. And like the outlines around the rugs, just like a darker grayed out version of the main rug color. Because every time you put a black outline on something, you're creating a visual hierarchy choice that says, this is really important, and it creates loads of visual noise. And if we kind of pasteled out the floor grain here and the rugs and everything, it would just be much more easy to understand at a glance which part of the screen is what you walk around on and which part of the screen is stuff you bump into. And I'm not necessarily just saying that to the developer here. It's like a general principle in a lot of pixel art, and that's why if you look at games like Stardew Valley, and I know that's kind of a softer aesthetic, but they're quite sparing in what they do with outlines, and when something gets a black outline, your kind of outline choices sort of indicate things about how the game world works and kind of contribute more or less to the amount of visual noise on screen and stuff like that. The music is nuts. The music is absolutely nuts. I really, really like it, but it is quite when you're just in a walking around scene, it's quite intense. I would like to play a bit more of that, but we don't have time today. Let's move on to... Right, we're going to do all of the ones that are on itch first before the downloaded ones. So let's do... Echo Extract first. This was one that I've downloaded that. Unzipped. We've got Echo Extract, God Lies Above, and Shield Gun Cam. Is that everything left? I think so. And we will check out Deadliest Pigeon again at the end. I've played Deadliest Pigeon a couple of times, I think. I don't know how much will have changed with that, but we'll check it out in a minute. Echo Extract. God Lies Above. We'll do God Lies Above and Shield Gun Cam first, because we've played Echo Extract before on the stream. Game Maker game. It's really funny that the working title of this project, if you look up on the top left, is Pixel Game, and then we open it and it's like this beautiful hand-drawn high-res thing. I've not got around to checking out Next Fest yet. I just had so much scheduled for this week that I haven't really had any time to do anything that wasn't just like the core of what the channel is. I think I will start looking ahead and seeing what's on Steam and scheduling stuff around what's happening on Steam. But yeah, just got overwhelmed with our regular stuff that we have to do. Yeah, the music in the last game was wild. I really liked it. I think just need a better distinction between when it's kind of time to just walk around and when it's time to fight something. This has got some nice twinklies. I'll just turn it up a bit because it's quite quiet. Oh yeah, I saw this in the Discord. Let me get a controller. I think we're going to need it for this. It's white because it's a medical controller. holes back in. Cool demon. What's parry? Parry is L1, okay. In the usual place, I guess. I'm not going to be the best judge of this because I kind of hate parry mechanics, and when games have them as an optional thing, I just never engage with them. And I worked, and you know, this is not necessarily feedback on the game because we know that parry mechanics work and people play games with parry mechanics and use them and are fine with them. Personally, the reason why I always struggle with them, unless there's like a big slowdown like they do on Space Marine, there's like a big old highlight that you see way before, and it's more like you get like a 2-second parry window. But I think the reason why I sort of bounce off them so hard, hold X to heavy attack, is that it's like this moment in the game where you have to do exactly what the game wants you to do. And that to me is like stops feeling like a game at that point because you're doing a non-optional thing that you absolutely have to do at that point. And most of the time games are about making decisions, even if it's like split-second decisions in an action game between like doing dodging or rolling, or you know, dodging or rolling or parrying or something. But a lot of the time in games that expect you to parry, it's just like you must do this exact thing right now, and there's no other right option, you know. Yeah, I haven't played Sekiro. It's the only one of the modern FromSoft games that I haven't played. Is that telling me to press left and right? Not sure. It's cool setting, cool monster design. The combat largely feels pretty good. I know we already had a little bit of a round of feedback on this in the Discord in terms of like what reads well. I'll get into the next piece of combat and kind of see where we get with it. This time I faced the corpse eater. It was twisted, towering, and born of darkness. How did you strike it down? Ah, the tail is long and heavy. Come, let us go inside. This time I stood upon the monolith. Our home lay far below, so small I could scarcely see the people. Whoa! Can I see it with you someday? You may, but only if you best me in sword practice. Then I shall consider it when you have proven your stamina. Ha! Then that day is close. I nearly had you last time. Yeah, I love a bit of onboarding failure. That bout does not count. I had too much mead in me. Ha 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 ha! Father! Yes? This time I was slain by a dreadful beast of pitch-black fur. It had so much stamina. Father! This time I met a new foe. I was nearly at the summit of the monolith. It is... Okay, so I think it's trying to show us... I think it's jumping through some stuff that was supposed to have like combat moments in between it. There's a lot of dialogue system built into this so far where I just kind of, you know, with a project that's at this stage, I just want to be able to play the actual game. So it feels like we've got like an onboarding tutorial that teaches us how to fight. Then we go into story. And I want to go from story into just doing some easy combat after that. And I'm not sure what's happening with the game flow here, because it seems to just be showing us every story vignette that we've got in the game, rather than letting me take the skills that I've just learned in the tutorial and apply them elsewhere. Yeah, and honestly, like, my feeling about parries isn't a universal. I'm not saying that games shouldn't have them, because I can see that other people like them and like that play style. For me, it is more just like it just doesn't work with my brain. I have a sort of oppositional defiant streak, and when a game is like, you must do this thing, it always just rubs me up the wrong way, and parries are just like a very specific subset of that type of thing, you know? It's much more of a personalities type thing. I think that's like a... Here we go. Actually get to fight him now. So my big aesthetic thing with this would be, we're on the snow, I want to see blood going everywhere. And it'd be really cool if when we got hit, it was red blood, and when the corpse eater gets hit, it was black blood, right? So that the battlefield ends up like telling the story of the combat so far. You know, we hit him from the left, some black ichor splatters out to the right, all of that kind of stuff. That would be really kind of satisfying. Is that a... That looks like you should be able to get out of it because it's showing you things to mash on the screen. I would say from a... from a kind of production and playtesting point of view, you need to get this game to a point where people can just play through some combats without going through these dialogue scenes. The writing that we got is reasonably charming. I feel like this has proven its point, basically, that you are capable of making a nice looking narrative scene with some competent writing, and it's going to be good enough, right? But we don't need all of these. So I would try and set up a version of the game where you just kind of design a bunch of combats and let people pick them on like a click menu, and just have a big sign on it and say, this is not going to be in the full game. And then you can like test all the combats out without people having to run through the dialogue to get to them. Because really the story development doesn't need to be baked into you developing the gameplay of the game. And if you can make a way to kind of separate those out in a debug kind of way, so it's easy for people to test the combat without having to go through the story every time, you're going to make it a lot easier to kind of find problems and iterate on this and get your playtesters into the action. But there's some cool stuff there. Gwyn said, curious on your opinion on platformers, if that's how you feel about parries or other execution-heavy games. I mean, yeah, platformers are extremely broad church. I often feel like a platformer is more... Obviously, it is a genre, right? But I feel like the modifiers that you put on platformer are really what determine what it is at an experiential level. Because a precision platformer is a totally different sort of game from a puzzle platformer. The main thing they have in common is the viewpoint and the fact that the gameplay happens on the 2D plane and the fact that gravity is relevant, you know? So, like, there is very little that is the same between, like, Rain World and like, Bez and Super Meat Boy or Celeste, right? They're two sets of things that are totally different. I do like execution-based platformers, and I spent hours and hours and hours on Meat Boy back in the day. And I think when that kind of execution heavy, very Twitch based gameplay works for me is when it's kind of like the only thing the game is doing almost. Yeah, I mean, like driving games are a similar thing, like racing. It's not so, it's execution heavy, but you are still reacting to things that could be different each time as well. Maybe there's an element of that. Like, there's a theorist that I don't know how active he is now. He used to have a channel, Keith Begun, and he has this like different definitions of like a game versus a puzzle versus a challenge. And like, I don't know, those kind of taxonomies get very much like gatekeepery, and we're trying to say this thing isn't a game, but like in Bergen's taxonomy, for example, a dance mat game or a rock band or something like that isn't really a game because there's no decisions in it whatsoever. You're just being judged on, can you press these buttons at these exact moments? And I would say something like a platformer or a racing game, like a racing game or a precision platformer, has a little bit more sort of squishiness of like, I don't know, if you play a Mario level, there's going to be slight variations in the gameplay that you need to respond to based on, oh, when I jumped on that Koopa and I sent that shell off, it went in a different direction and it hit those boxes and da-da-da. There's all this kind of like other stuff going on that kind of varies it. So you're not just, you're making decisions rather than just reacting to exactly the same set of things each time. And I think that's part of that for me. When you ask like, how do I feel about kind of precision platformers and stuff like that? I think also the thing that makes the experience of playing something like Meat Boy or Celeste different from playing something like Guitar Hero is, in Guitar Hero, you're not really kind of cognitively working out how to play the song. You're memorizing when the symbols will appear, right? Whereas when you play a level in Celeste or Meat Boy, you are actually kind of, although it's a precision platformer, it's not a puzzle platformer, there is a sort of puzzle to working out the optimum way of doing the thing. And as you're playing it and as you're failing, you're sort of like working out how to do it better next time. And I think there's some kind of pleasure. I derive some sort of pleasure from that. Whereas I have played Elden Ring all the way through twice. I've played Dark Souls 1 through most of the way. I've played a little bit of the other Dark Souls games. I've played a little bit of Bloodborne. And I have never found pleasure in learning how to time a parry in any of FromSoft's games. And maybe that's because there are just other options. And maybe you have to have a particular type of personality where you see the difficult version of the thing in the game and you're like, I want to master that. I just don't have that. Like, I just don't have that kind of energy in me. And when I say this stuff, it's not me being like, this feature in a game is bad. It's just me kind of reflecting on how my psychology determines what I find pleasurable in games, which is something that we all need to be able to do in order to make games. You know, if you work kind of for someone else doing the higher work as a designer, you kind of have to be able to make games for everyone because you will be asked to make types of games and you won't have any control over the brief. The great thing about being an indie dev is you can make games that are just for people like you, that appeal to a set of kind of pleasures and interests that just directly map onto what you like and that you can understand. And I would say one of the biggest issues that I see, I talk about this a lot on this channel, with maybe it's mostly indie devs that come from like a software development background rather than indie devs who get into it because they're gamers. But you get people that insist on trying to make types of games that they don't understand. And that would be like me trying to make a Souls-like, trying to make a very kind of parrying heavy action game that is very execution based, like you say. That's like not a good fit because I don't understand what makes that thing fun or how to make that thing fun. And you know, it's just like any kind of art or media that has genres, you're going to be more suited to make certain types of things based on what you already like. And that's what makes indie games special, is you can like a type of thing and you can just get directly engaged with making that type of thing. And I was having a conversation with someone recently and they made the point that learning game design is like, you can just learn game design for one genre of game. And there are some kind of universal things you can learn about human psychology, like, I don't know, like humans and loss aversion, right? There's stuff you can learn about loss aversion that applies to nearly every sort of game and how people behave in games. There's a book by Jeff Engelstein on it. At some point, we'll get around to reading it on my podcast. That's all about applying the concept of loss aversion in game design. There are certain things like that. There are certain things like UX and like how people read images and how people understand like metaphors in games when you see a thing and you understand how it works and stuff like that. There's all of those kind of things that can be universalized and applied in any sort of game. But a lot of the interaction design is so genre specific that you could just work in one genre and have an entire career there. You know, that's what Dracnet does with Soccer Band games. You know, I can't remember his real name. Guy that makes a good snowman is hard to build. Made an entire career just making the same sort of game. Zachtronics, a career making mostly the same type of game. And recently was listening to an interview with Zach from Zachtronics on Design Notes podcast, and he was saying like their most unsuccessful games are the ones where they deviated from their kind of core competencies of making those logical programming games. So like we're very the benefit of being independent is that you can go, right, I very strongly understand this particular type of game, and that makes me uniquely positioned to make a good new one of them. And I think the thing that really kind of like marks this kind of community out a little bit differently on this channel is we're not all just people that are scrabbling to take our development skills and make whatever's hot right now, right? I'm always encouraging people, like, make what you know, make what you're good at. There is an audience for every single type of game, but you have to understand that type of game and be good at executing it to be a good designer in that genre. What would you say your favorite game sits? Cozy game, combat, sandbox? I really don't. I don't have a favorite genre. I have things I like to do in games, and my favorite games tend to either be like the best one in their genre or something that does something unusual with that genre, I would say. I think as a creative person, and there will be other people that relate to this because of the kind of type of community we have here. As a creative person, I tend to like games that have some sort of expressive element. You know, like I like engine building games where I can build a character and choose their loadout and stuff, and where I can make aesthetic decisions about the type of character and it will play out in the gameplay. You know, I don't just want to make a fire wizard. I don't just want to make a wizard. I want to make a fire wizard that wears fire clothes and all of that. I like games that allow me to do that sort of thing, whether they're action games or turn-based games. I like novelty, and one of the reasons why running this channel and doing stuff in this format works incredibly well for me is I can just dip into things and see what they are. And, you know, like I had a period in my teenage years where my brother introduced me to emulators, and we just got, you know, 200, 300 SNES games on an emulator, and I would just go through them all and play them all for 20 minutes and stuff like that. And even before that, when we had like an Amiga 500, we had like this massive library of pirated games, and I would just constantly be dipping into them and seeing what they were. So, like, I think another way of putting it is, you get like my favorite games are often like card games, things that I can sit there and chill out and play in it, or like kind of very immersive wander around in the world type games where there's like a world that you feel like you live in. So, you know, that side of things, the more kind of imsimmy side of things. But I'm also the sort of person that would rather experience 5 different things that I'm sort of, yeah, that's okay, than repeatedly experience the same thing over and over again that I like, but I'm too used to. And that's not, I know that not everyone is like that. But for example, with like music, if there's like a song that plays every day on the radio and I really like that song, I will stop liking that song very, very quickly, because it's kind of being forced upon me that I must listen to this over and over again. I would rather listen to a song I hadn't heard before to experience something new I don't know how much of that is like a very kind of ADHD novelty-seeking trait. But yeah, I don't know. I find it very, very hard to talk about things like favorites because it doesn't really, it's just not something that consistently stays the same for me. I do know that one of the things I've struggled with in my own game projects over the years is the types of things that I like to make, or the types of things I'm capable of making, don't map very well onto what I like to play. So, you know, I would love to make a 4X game, or like a very crunchy tactical game like a Darkest Dungeon or a Slay the Spire. Those are types of games that require very intense UI work and lots of data architecture type work, and those are things that I'm just not disciplined enough to execute very well. So I tend to end up making like physicsy, character-driven-y games because I know how to do those. And that's one of the reasons why the game that I'm currently working on is like a mix of platforming and deck building, because it allows me to sort of build the basic action around something that I find relatively simple to manipulate, and then include some of the stuff from like deck building, card gamey, engine building games that I find interesting without having to like build a really robust one of those. Okay, move, left stick, WASD. We got two guys. I'm controlling them both. Yeah, I need between like 3 and 5 years to forget a movie before I can enjoy it again. Okay, L1 is going to turn this guy into a shield so that he doesn't get blasted. Transfer energy when in range. So I think the energy is going to be those green blocks down the bottom. What was the big game that they did this with the two brothers? Is it just called Two Brothers? Or Brothers? Where I'm controlling each character with a different joystick. Okay. Let me just go back. Get close together. Transfer energy when in range. Oh, okay. I think this guy needs to block. Yep. So what was happening there? The blue robot is blocking with L1. That's absorbing the energy. I'm transferring it to the spider bot, and then the spider bot can shoot using the same energy. That's neat. That's cool. One of the things I would say, some like a little bit of confusion that I had there that you can clean up very, very easily is you're using the word energy. I don't know what energy means at this stage, right? I've got these green boxes on my screen. I can't, before I've collected some energy, I don't know that it's the blue one, right? The green one is life and the blue one is energy, basically. So there's a few things you can do there. You can make it so that when energy is mentioned, you make it the color, right? So you do some color coding because you've already got color coding on the resources of the green and blue. That's not super colorblind friendly, but it's one thing you can do to like help people immediately understand what you mean by transferring energy. The other thing you can do is incorporate symbols as early as possible, right? So the bottom, we have a green box with a heart or a cross on, and then we have a blue box with a lightning bolt on. And then when we mention energy in the tutorial, we use the icon. That's not necessarily a super important thing to do at this stage of the project when you don't have much in it, but I did notice that I had a kind of learning brain fart moment here where it was saying transfer energy, and I didn't know what that meant yet. So here we're gathering energy by blocking. I'd be tempted to call it absorb rather than shield, because I get it. It's a defensive move, but we're doing more than shielding, aren't we? We're absorbing. Right, we're going to transfer energy. That energy goes over to the spider bot. Okay, they don't need to stay next to each other for the spider bot to shoot. The spider bot can just... It kind of locks on. I like the fact you have automatic lock on because it takes the emphasis away from aiming, and this doesn't feel like it feels like focusing too much on aiming might be kind of wrong for the game, because we're already sort of rubbing our patting our head and rubbing our belly with the movement and the positioning of the characters quite a bit. And get that one closer. There we go. It's a neat little the mechanic feels good. Is you're kind of doing the same thing each time. So one of the things I would look out for here is, how are we going to make that feel like a varied interaction? Because every one we've done so far, we've had to do roughly the same thing. And like the positioning of the enemies and the characters doesn't seem to create much variation in that. Let me just kill this guy. Ooh. And I would say that's like that's a design problem you need to solve pretty early on. Let's see what it's like in a future area if we've got another one. Does it get a bit more varied in terms of like the encounter design? Can this kind of interaction feel varied enough to be a whole game? Because that's what you're trying to answer with early prototypes. It's not just like, is this fun? It's also like, what would I need to do to turn this into a bigger thing that people would play for hours, you know? That's kind of one of the questions you're answering. Can we do both of these with one? Oof. Wasn't charged up enough. So it feels very much like every encounter with every enemy at the moment is basically just doing the same thing. And we're going to have to think a little bit about how to get variety in there. But the basic thing that you're doing is neat. And I could see a version of this where you need to use the energy to do different things as well, or you need to shoot at different things. Go back down here. Depending on whether you've charged up before you come into the encounter, you can sort of decide whether you're using that thing to charge or whether you're just going to attack it straight away. But it always takes all three units to fire with the spider tank. Oof. Quite when you've accumulated a bit of damage up to this point, it's quite punishing because I don't think it heals in the transition to the next section of the game. It kind of feels like we want a little kind of charging station where we get some health back, like a little Half-Life-y health vending machine or something. Yeah, very, very punishing. Central idea of this is cool. So you've got a big design question you need to answer of like, I'm going to just shut the game down because it's slowing us camera down. You need to answer the design question of how do you do variety in this game? Because at the moment it's like, okay, that final room I got up to where you've got the two of them at the back wall, it's not really any different from the room before. It's just two enemies and you do them in whatever order depending on whether you need to charge up or whatever. So you really, really need to answer that question of like, how would you provide variety in this game? Now, it may be the case that if I got past that room and I got into the next bit, you've got some other little puzzles or different types of encounter, but it was a little bit too hard to get deep enough into the game to see if that was the case. But at the moment, every encounter is really the only thing that makes it different. The only thing that makes each encounter feel different is, are we dealing with one or are we dealing with two? So that's a design problem you need to think about. And you could approach it by, well, I don't know. You could approach it by having enemies that respond differently. There needs to be some sort of variety in this game that I can't see at the moment. And then as you're solving that, the next thing I would think about in terms of feel is, what are you doing in the game to make the things the player should do feel rewarding? Because at the moment, and I know, this is kind of, let me just get my notes up, because I've probably got some notes on this. 1 second. Gather energy, transfer energy, shoot enemy. Okay. Not sure. So the dev said this is an early prototype with a single playable level. I am not sure if this will go in an action direction, shoot, evade, survive, or more of a puzzle direction, i.e. gather limited energy in a specific way to clear the level. Yeah, so that's kind of an interesting problem to start off with, is like, is this a puzzle game? Is it a combat game? There's gonna have to be some sort of variety either way. It feels like it could be both. You've got a shooting mechanic, but that shooting mechanic could just be that we're launching energy at different types of things. It feels quite satisfying to hit the enemies. One thing I would develop as you go forward, though, and don't treat this as polished because it's not, is what are you doing to make the things the player should do feel satisfying? Because it's very hard, even like in a relatively early prototype, if you've decided, you've made your first prototype and then you're deciding, you're kind of thinking, oh, there's something here, I'm going to keep going with it. Even in those early stages, it's worth working out which actions you want players to be doing, or which actions you want players to feel good about doing, and putting a little bit of juice into those. You just want to give people that little reward. Every time I kind of successfully block and absorb a piece of energy, every time I hit an enemy and blow them up, don't just change the sprite to black, put a sound effect, put a VFX. It's like a very small amount of work to do that. But you kind of, some of that will tell you as well of like whether you are more up for making a puzzle game or making an action game, yeah, not totally sure about that one. The kind of core controls of it feel nice. I think you could maybe split into two prototypes and say, okay, you're saying, I don't know if this is going to be an action game or a puzzle game. Well, at the moment, we can't see what a puzzle using this game, using these elements would look like, because you haven't made that, right? So if you want to answer the question of, is this a puzzle game or is it an action game, you need to make a little bit of both things and then use that to answer the question. If you make a puzzle game, you need to work out what the puzzles are and start implementing them and then see if they work. That you can't just sort of like make the top level decision about whether to make a puzzle game or an action game before you know what the puzzle would actually be. And if you do decide to make this an action game, whichever way you go down, it's going to need variety, right? So, and it's going to need kind of good feedback on the things that the player is supposed to be doing. Yeah, I don't really know what else to say about that one. I feel like the answer, the kind of directions you could take this in are too divergent, and the best way to test them is to make something that's a little bit of both. And then when you've tested that with people and seen which part of it they gravitate towards, then you could like hone in on one of those things and exclude the other. But it's a hard question to answer when you haven't got something to look at that shows me what the puzzle version of this game is, or shows me what the combat version of this game is. At the moment, it's like learning the initial controls is interesting. Applying them is interesting the first time you do it. Then after that, we don't have enough variety to see why someone would find that enjoyable to do for a long period of time. And it's just a little bit too. You kind of need to restore people's health before, as they go, like give them some checkpoints or something like that. Because it's just a little bit too punishing. So I didn't get past that bit. Yes, sorry, my brain is starting to time out on me now. Let's end on. No, I've got still one more downloaded from itch thing to check out. It is Echo Extract, which we have played before. This was like the extraction beat 'em up, which is such a funny concept. I love it. And that's the Unity Crash handler. We don't need that. We need the actual game. I think it's opening. I'm not going to ask it to open again. 1 second. There we go. Marcin, I don't know why your text is not visible sometimes. I do not see it. If it's been filtered out by YouTube, I just don't see it, so I don't know. Do not have an answer to that question. Actually, I do have... So the one small thing I do have control over is there are certain words that are muted on my channel. But I thought that was just from video comments. It may be that muting happens to chat streams as well. I don't stream chats. I don't know. Don't know how it works. I love the aesthetic of this. Is really goofy and fun. Toggle sprint. Left button to block. Blocking right before the enemy. This me will parry. Parrying deals massive guard damage. If the enemy loses their guard, they will become staggered. Staggered, unable to move, and vulnerable to attack for a short time. We're parrying again. The enemy is staggered. Time to beat them up. Light attack and heavy attack, okay. I'm gonna loot him. Click on the brown sweater with that. I'm gonna take your sweater. Yeah, I think this already has a lot going for it. We played it like a month or two ago. I feel like the visual quality of the 3D world is already really high. Like, I would pay for a game that looks like that. I think the typography and iconography in the UI feels not as great, and I'm not totally sure why. I think it's maybe just not a style that fits, that seems to visually fit with the 3D for me. Light, light, heavy. Light, 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 heavy. Light, 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 heavy. I think making these guys into sort of neon punk robots was a very good choice because it allows us to do kind of goofy stuff with how they, with certain animations and everything that would feel bad if it was like... This is the kind of situation where I'm like, don't add wizards. Because if this was like knights and wizards and Dark Souls stuff and used these animations and this animation timing, it would feel silly. The dagger. Is that a dagger? Rid dagger. Put it in your fist. I will. But I also want this nice sort of crop top suspenders combo. That's swag. That's a mood. Come on, let's do it. Don't mash attacks. The tutorial detected my button mashing. All weapons have special moves. Use a special move. Puts the move on countdown. Okay. Dagger throw. RB. Spur. Combos. Dagger. Hard light hard with the dagger. Special light light. Okay. Oh nice, you teleport after the dagger throw. Hard light hard. I'm not gonna get the hammer, but I am gonna take your white pants. I'm gonna keep these. Is this like a backpack? I'm not sure what's the difference between this inventory block? Oh, that's the inventory within that item. You get inventory from the clothes, I think. Can we rotate these? Do I have a rotate button? I think that was a thing I requested the first time I played this. I always think when you... Oh yeah, we've got one. I always think when you've got a grid-based inventory like that, you really do need rotation because it's not only is it like a helpful UX thing, it creates like a nice little puzzle with the inventory management, which I think as soon as you see one of these grid-based inventories, you expect there to be a little bit of a kind of puzzly aspect of how you manage the inventory and how you organize it. What's that? A med file? I'll put that in my tiny shirt. We're gonna leave with the extractor. Gnar, that's a good shout. Like, in terms of the top text on that, that's great for a header in this style. I feel like the body typography isn't quite right. Yeah, I would look at what they do in like Wipeout as well. Endo is here. We're just moaning about your typographic choices at the moment. These guys. Hey you, special light. Yeah! I want to do the plasma move, which is hard, light, hard. Was that plasma? Yeah. Jumps, take that. Yeah, the timing doesn't feel super hard to learn in this, which is good. We take that. So, for folks who haven't seen this before, this is kind of an extraction game. So you're going in and doing a beat 'em up and looting people for their stuff, and then you take it out and you do kind of crafting and stuff with it. I'm not going to use the hammers because I think I did hammers. Oh, we do need to look at the value of things, though, I guess. What are we losing? What's the value? That's got a low value. The clothes have a higher value than the weapon. Multipass pants. Oh no. There's some weird, scary fractal thing going on with inventories here because you can put items in a pair of pants and then you can put that pair of pants in another pair of pants. Is there like a possible exploit to this? Please tell me there is. So this pair of pants has all of these in. What if I put them over there, then I put these on? Those have got the Vice white pants in, but if I put the Vice white pants on, they've still got... Oh my goodness. I've got my yellow pants on that have my Vice white pants on that have all of these other things in, including a confusingly the same pair of yellow pants. We can do fractal inventory clothing things, which is good. I like it. It's going to be confusing for people, and there will be some weird exploits around it, but I don't hate it. Pants in pants. That would be a really funny that would be a funny marketing thing to do in a trailer for this. You know, like you have your kind of like your things that are like, beat up a guy, take their stuff. You know, like just like the cards that come up in the trailer, and then one of them is like, take their pants, put their pants inside your pants, and then make it look like a sort of 80s Nintendo ad. Oh, Stimpack. Okay. Okay, we can't pause and learn moves while we're being attacked because we don't get any pause on the menu. That's fine. I do kind of like that it's just got that kind of classic beat 'em up thing of you do have to learn the combos from a list. And okay, we're not changing characters, but we are changing weapons, and that's where your movesets derive from. So you can drugs. Give me them drugs. Let's see what the other knife combos we can learn. Right. Lethality is represented by the 5 daggers under your health bar. Lethality can enhance combos and unlock special abilities. If an ability consumes lethality, then it will reset your lethality. Okay. So hammer gives you armor from moves, and the dagger gives you lethality from moves. So they're different playstyles. Hammer is a bit tankier. Dagger is a little bit more glass cannon. We gain lethality from doing the hammer throw. We gain lethality from doing plasma that I was already doing. Now we need to learn something that requires lethality. So heavy, light, light, heavy is a kick that spends lethality. And heavy, 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 heavy consumes 3. So that one requires 2 lethality to do. There's a lot of like requirements to these moves that would be really hard for people to internalize, but I guess that's part of learning. And heavy, heavy, heavy consumes lethality. I've got 5 of those at the moment, so I can do that move. Excuse me. Heavy, heavy. Heavy, 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 heavy. That didn't work because it didn't consume my lethality. Unless I don't have any lethality, and those grey symbols mean that I don't have them. And they need to be coloured in or something. Yeah, I think the amount of resources, like the special, when can I use specials, the lethality and stuff, it's gonna be a bit of a learning curve for people. I think you might need a way to sort of like gradually introduce it all. I'm thinking of did you ever play Remember Me? That had like a kind of, you unlock the moveset in that from what I remember, and it was a good shout because it was like a AAA beat 'em up in a world where those don't, you know, we don't get many of those anymore. So it's almost like they needed to train a new audience to play trad beat 'em ups. Let's share to open the build menu. We're going to build our cyber house. I'm going to make a floor out of nylon. That's a laser cool hideout. Time for the med station. And I think you've done it, Endo, but I remember last time I was saying that you needed to make sure that the UX of doing the building mirrored the UX of interacting with the inventory. So the thing I remember noticing last time is they had different rotate buttons, even though it's the same action. I think you've rectified that since the last time I played it, which is good because it's just a lot more intuitive. Now I can replenish my stim packs at the med station. Let's close the build menu and look at the other stations I have set up. I can use this extractor to start a new raid. So that takes you into a new level. This is my storage. Put my loot there. I can sell loot there. Okay. The home computer can only sell stuff that I put into my storage. This seems to not be the stuff that I came back with last time. Don't know what's going on there. Okay, we're going to do a hammer run. I'm not going to get super into the building stuff because it really feels like to experience that properly I would need to be playing the game for a much longer period of time, but we'll just sort of just have a quick look at what else we can build if it will let us. UX of this is great. Your character just sort of stays where they were, and then the camera always goes back to like the same place in relation to the where it was last time you were building, which I think makes it easier to understand. It's good. The thing with this kind of base building is you kind of you've got a trade-off of like you're gonna have people that all they care about is making something that looks cool. And like, obviously you've got some functional stuff that people need to build as well, but it's an interesting one to try and balance as you're working on the project of like giving people both types of you know, both types of appeal. Don't have enough credit for that. We finished building. Open that. We have some stuff we can sell. I think, was it Journey to the Savage Planet might be a good reference point for stuff that people like putting in a silly little base as well. If you run out of ideas for that. It's the sort of thing where you don't really need to play the game to use it for research. You can just look at the wiki and see what their inventory of base stuff is. You know? Home sweet home. Finally. I've got a roof over my head. The cyber rain won't fall on me anymore. Right, so that's kind of the loop, right? We go on a raid, we get some stuff, we bring it back, we sell it. We can do pants in pants in pants. I don't know if it was a bug or if it's just what's supposed to happen on the first raid, but I didn't seem to have the items that I went back with from the first run. And I don't know if that's just meant to happen, but it didn't seem right. And then, yeah, I think there's something really pleasing here. I think you could also think about, like, features that will make the base building more shareable. Like, do you have some sort of screenshot generator that spits out to a particular thing, you know? And like, what is the end game variety in what you can build? Like, can you make it look like a little bar or a little castle or whatever? Because whenever you give people a building-based game, or even like a dress-up game, you almost want to like give people a couple of different palettes of things that they can pick from. It's kind of how they handle content creation for like stuff like Animal Crossing and stuff. It's like you get some cottagecore stuff, you get some silly stuff, you get some goth stuff, you know, and they try and make sure that there's all of those different types of appeals baked into that system, because otherwise the appeal of like choosing what you have goes away because it doesn't feel like an expressive thing. So I would be thinking about that as you approach the base building decoration part. At the moment, I'm not sure why I would need to make that base bigger or what stuff there is to put in it, so it feels like it's more of a cosmetic thing than a practical thing, because we're not building it to like defend from someone else or to like play the main game inside of, you know? Oof. That's a great death animation as well. It's the old Fortnite cop out. They don't die. They're not really dying. They're not really shooting and getting killed. They just hologram out. Right, we're going to spend 5 minutes on Deadliest Pigeon. I don't know how different Deadliest Pigeon will be from last time I played it. I think I still have it in my library. Last thing submitted for this one. Remember, we do these every other Wednesday. If you're a patron, you're part of our Discord. The form to send stuff in for this one is in the playtesting and QA channel, which you can also just use to organize playtests and QA with other people. The Discord happens every day. So it's still a relatively small community. You can kind of find people that are working on similar things to you, which is a pretty good exercise, actually. If you've got like someone that you know that is making a similar type of game, it's a lot easier to, right? It's not always easy to be critical of other people's games in terms of like what you actually say to them, right? That's you know, giving feedback in a tactful way and not just going, this is shit, is a skill, right? That can be practiced. But it's often easier to see the problems with someone else's game, even if you're not like necessarily comfortable with discussing them. So it's a good exercise to play other people's work in progress games that are kind of in a similar to design space to you. Oh, we can. I think that's new. I don't think that was in the game last time. That's great. Because you'll be able to like see stuff that's wrong with their game easier than you can see that stuff that's wrong with your own game, and that might lead you to understanding your own games better as well. Because when we're trying to work out what to do with our own games, the problem is you're the designer and the developer, and the designer will, you know, the designer should be saying, this is what we do next, this is what will make the game better. But the developer in you might be going, I don't want to do that, it takes a lot of time. I don't want to remake that thing I already made, you know? And that's why it can be really helpful to sort of give design feedback on other people's games. It gets you more used to thinking in that mode rather than in a sort of production and development centric mode, which is all about like trying to do things efficiently and stuff, rather than following the fun of what's going to be the most kind of engaging thing you can do with the gameplay. Sniper rifle. This is so silly. I love it. I think Steam should do a Cinti Assets Fest. It's just like all of the games that have used Cinti Assets. It would be a fun thing to do a competition around, like, what's the best game that someone has made with these art assets in. You are dead! Interface buttons feel very kind of mobile gamey. You know, like the kind of theming and the amount of like gore and the gangsters and stuff makes it feel a little bit edgier than that. It's kind of feels a bit strange to have that very kind of shiny kind of kids mobile game kind of interface stuff. I don't think that's necessarily going to harm this game per se, but it's something that stands out to me. New gun. Is that a different gun? I don't know. I really like the way the bullet time is done in this. I don't know if it's jarring to watch, but it feels good when you're playing it. The bad guys are a very strange assortment of like terrorist coded and gangbanger coded. Doesn't make any sense. That guy's got like some sort of armband on that indicates some kind of like political affiliation, and then this they're just like that guy's like a Latino gangbanger, and then the other guy is like a terrorist from a 90s movie. They're just all working together. They might actually just be people working on the construction site, and I've just dropped in at a bad time. One thing I don't understand is, and I know I'm overthinking it, but why is none of the food stuff that you would expect a pigeon to eat? Like, I don't know who else here has ever fed pigeons, but I've never known anyone to go, hey, I'm feeding the pigeons, I'm going to take a carrot. I'm going to take them a pizza. We got any cold pizza left from last night? I'm going to take it out, I'm going to give it to the pigeons. I guess pizza's a little bit more believable. I don't know. I don't know what the norms are for pigeon feeding across the world, and right, pigeons will eat anything, but like carrot and an apple. One of those decisions where you can tell that the asset pack has made the choice rather than like it being based on any sort of like rationale that exists in the game world or in like or in the history of games. Because you could say, okay, this is like you know, like a kind of trashy action thing, so we'll do Streets of Rage, we'll do a big chicken on the floor. That's the food, right? That's like a rationale that comes from like thinking about games. We could say, oh, the pigeon, you know, pigeons eat I don't know. People feed pigeons with their French fries. I don't know what people feed pigeons with. You know, bread, bagel, something like that. And that would be a rationale that comes from the game world. But the rationale is just like, I got some art assets, I got some apples. I guess I'd eat an apple. I don't know. I'm just not very good at it. Yeah, the peas is ducks. It's ducks. Ducks like peas. It's a protein. I think most animals, humans included, are not supposed to eat glutinous bread. But we're just like, hey, you're a bird. We've decided that that's what you eat because of cartoons and stuff. Right, thank you all for joining. I'm kind of losing my voice. I'm going to log off in a moment. If there are any of the games that you like the look of and you want to check them out yourself, after the stream becomes the VOD, I will put links on the timestamps. Some of them might have been private, so I won't be able to link them, but I think most of the games this time were available to the public. So thank you all for submitting them. Everyone who watched, good luck with whatever you're working on today. And have a good rest of the week. Back to normal Indies Under the Knife tomorrow, which is games that anyone has submitted. We've got 3 games that are about colony management, I guess. I think. See if they're kind of actually in the same genre. I'm not sure if they are, but we'll find out tomorrow. Thank you for joining, and have a good rest of your Wednesday.